Hey, I'm back. It's been a while since I've updated everyone. So in our latest episode of Marshall Attempts to Drive Himself Crazy, making a Bentley model, here we go. Here are some of the updates. The frame has now been painted, and actually some of the parts that are in place are not permanently in place, but I just wanted everybody to see what we have in here so far. So again, the engine's been laid in for test fitting. We've got the inside areas painted the proper gray now. Some of this is going to be completely hidden when it's built, so I didn't need to pay much attention to topside detail. I'm paying more attention to what's going on underneath and on the underside of this piece. But also there's some other things that have been made since, besides getting the frame all painted and some of the detail parts finished and on and assembled, because now it's an assemble and fabricate as I go along, or fabricate and assemble. And I'm figuring out the steps as I do this. Also, trying to figure out what has to be made first and how everything's going to fit, because it's like a Rubik's Cube or an extremely complicated jigsaw puzzle. So for getting this set, and because before I do the radiator shell and to get everything else to fit and to test fitting horns and other areas that are going up front, I had to do the generator and the generator cover, or at least what you're going to be able to see. And so that's it now, completely finished off, and with detail numbers that are individually put on. I'm going to have a lot of individual photos of this once it's done. But anyway, this was a tough shape to do, because although it seems simple, it's not. I mean, aside from the roundness, because then you've got areas where it feathers out, and you've got curves. And again, it all has to be to certain dimensions too, so you can't just do a shape and and not care about it. So it's really got to stay to size. The same with trying to get the round shapes here, and then as it feathers out and angles in, what appeared to be simple wasn't, which is what usually happens with these things. So anyway, the parts that can be seen are what I make. There's no point in spending time or money on what you're not going to see. So this goes in here, and eventually when it gets assembled, everything will be solidly glued in. And then to get this so that because it hangs off the front, and to be able to get it so it's solid enough and really stays in place, so that gets set into the whole housing. And then over that there is the hole that I have at the front of the engine, and it'll mount approximately like that and be solidly fixed in place. So I don't have to worry about it ever coming apart or falling off, which would be a small disaster. So I'm going to put those away. There's also the cap that I made for it too, which you can see in here against my little white gloved hand, and down there, and that's been coated and with a bit of a chrome trimming pen that I use, and gives it the right look. And that I'm just going to set aside for the moment. As we go over there, take the engine out, because it really is only just a temporary setting, and I just wanted really everybody to see this. These two bars, these are also only temporarily in place because I still have to fit. This actually is the way that's going to be permanently glued. Will be upright, and then the floor goes over that. But I have to remove these because once I go to the rear of assembling the axle and all the suspension rear, I need to be able to access as much as I can. And then the linkages that pertain to gearbox and brake systems, etc., those will go in place. So those will go pretty much last. What we've done here with this is, now that it's all completely painted, we've got the front leaf springs are in place. We've got little castle nuts mounting to the underside of the main frame cross member there. Holes have been opened up and set. All the shocks, everything's been set so that it'll properly fit when I'm ready. We've got license plate mounts, even though it didn't run with the plate, but those brackets were on during Le Mans, so they're going to be on here now too. We've got the little brass grease nipples that are around everywhere. We've got the underside of the frame, and not necessary to get everything in, but just again, it's a little bit of a shot, give you an idea. The jig has been modified also to hold this in terms of for my access and for easy removal now of this, because soon I'm going to be setting the wheels and axles permanently in place. That's a whole other process. But as I do finish off the front suspension, so now we've got the leaf springs in place, we've got all the shock absorbers made, and I have had to mark them rear, and I've got left and right, because each shock is specific to each corner of the car, and there are 2 shocks per corner, which really makes things a little mind-boggling, and they go in different directions. There are going to be arms, control arms that attach to them. There are little shock adjustment handles too that are there, and those are all set and painted now. They've got little photo etched emblems on them and castle nuts, so they're multi-dimensional. It's not just one part, it's a number of parts that got made and got shaped. We've got mounting plates for them, etc. We've got some little tubes that are done. There are so many parts that go to the suspension. We've got mounting brackets underneath that go to the front axles. We've got pins. We have little teeny nuts, and these are pretty small, so you get an idea by looking at the pencil point and the size of the nut. Those are some of the pieces that I work with. So those are little machine parts that have to go on just for detail, just so that everything gets the right look. Because this, if we go to one of these photos here, this is just one view of the underside of what I have to assemble with making the shock. So we've got the leaf springs in place. We've got, this is the bottom of one of the shock absorbers that I just showed. There's a handle on the side there. There are control arms that I have to make. There's still some other arms and bits and pieces. These will get made as I move along and assemble everything. In fact, right now we've got, you see these little brackets that are here, or those little plates. I've got two of them in here. They're brass. Those have been made. The other two are actually temporarily attached to the bottom of the axle, because I'm just at the stage of where I'm setting pins and going to set to where those mount, so that I can get this ready for finally attaching the axle to the springs permanently. And then there are these that go on. These are upper mounts for the bars and control arms that go on to the axle. So this has just been made and painted. There's one for the right side and one for the left side. They have little cotter pins that in theory would pull out, so this has just been simulated with a little pull tab on one end and little simulated pin wires on the other. Anyway, so when we get that done, you'll get to see that, though even with the videos the way we'll do it, it'll be hard to see all the detail that's on there. Other things that have been made too, which I don't think I've shown before, we've got the horns, which are all finished off, and those are left and right specific. We've got the back sides have to be very detailed, the front, everything has to be there, because these horns are going to mount up right around here on the front bar, so they're going to be very, very visible. And again, they are left and right specific. So two different horns, and the on the bottoms of them too are their canisters. And in fact, the canister is a little bit different, each also for left and right. And they'll get set up with the wires and all the and hoses that'll be going from them. Not too much, but a little bit here and there. And then on the underside, also going back to the frame, actually let me go back to the front axle too, because these are, again, this is left and right. We've got the brake backings, we've got the insides, we've got the brake, we've got that's all set. And let's see, we've got, this is the left, yeah, this is the left side, so it's going to slip on like that. And then I can take one of the wheels, I've marked the wheels and tires also, that's left front, so that's the one that's going to go on there. And that's how it's going to look. Actually, well, that's, I still have to make the knockoffs. But what you've got here is the wire wheel all finished. And the wheels I had to get set and done. I had to finish them with the wheel weights, and which are two on the front. And I've made them a little bit different for each side too. We've got the valve stems, which is a multi-piece item too. Hard to see, and I'm not sure if you can see inside there where I've got the decals that I had made much earlier on, which were the correct Rudge knockoffs. So they've got the lettering on there, they've got the gold, they've got the red hand, that's also part of the whole logo. And the weights are simulated. There's an inside and outside with they were a wound lead that went around the wire. So that's simulated there, along with the black tape that would have been on the top and the bottom. And this is how the car ran at Le Mans. So that's the way it is being done. And what else we have here? We've got a number of other things. I also have, what I'll show here is the belly pan, which has been made now too, which was a really very complex shape to get right, because you've got, what happens is it looks like initially it looks like an easy shape, but it really isn't, because you've got at the rear, you've got a fairly flat across with rounded edges, and then as also you've got it angling down and narrowing, and by the time you're at the end, it's rounded as to where it has to meet and attach it, because those pins are set to go into the back of the transmission case or back of the engine. These parts have to, as they get mounted to the frame, so actually the way it's going to go, show you really quickly, and it gets mounted with pins, etc. So the pins hold that in place there, and it gets mounted approximately, well, actually right about there is how it's going to mount to the frame. So that's going to be, and it'll show a lot from the side. So again, pretty much everything had to be there. But what you're not going to see are a number of the things that I have, some of the frame members underneath, so I didn't go crazy with them. They probably have a little more shape and detail than they really needed, but sometimes you don't really find out or figure all of that out until you're a little bit further along in the build. So, but better to have everything there than not have what you need to have there. And I think that just about wraps it up in terms of the pieces, what we've done. Again, the rear wheels, they've got different amount of weights on them. The spare wheel also has a different amount of weights. Again, part of variation, and you want to be a little more realistic. You never want to have something be cookie cutter identical, or the way you would come out of a factory, or the way somebody might computer model everything, where it's the same on all sides. And you'll find so many companies and individuals make so many glaring mistakes like that. So the whole point is to give the model a little bit of life, a little bit of character, a little bit of realism, and also make it really accurate, the way things really were, not the way somebody imagines them to be. And I think that is just about it for today, kids.